What's up, everybody? Hope you all are well. It is your girl, MJ. If you missed our message, YouTube is having some troubles tonight getting live streams up. And so they're currently down. And until they're able to fix the issue, I did not want to rob you of an opportunity for a Bible study. So here we are recording this, and we're uploading this to our Instagram page. We'll send it out as well, and hopefully we'll be able to eventually upload it to our YouTube. Today was going to be our final day of Christ and Culture, our series by H. Richard Niebuhr. We are reading his book, Christ and Culture, and we have taken the last month, really, of May and April to really dive into this understanding of who is Christ and who is culture, and how do these two things work together, if at all. And so we've entertained 5 separate arguments that Niebuhr likes to consider as he tries to answer what we've discovered is called the enduring problem. The enduring problem, which is essentially, who is Jesus Christ in culture? And ultimately, who do Christians then have to be in culture as a result of who Jesus is? And so he looks at the ancient context, the culture in which Jesus lived and died and rose again. And then he looks at modern culture and helps us to understand how to apply who Jesus was then to who Jesus is showing us to be now. And so we're just going to review the arguments. We had a wonderful activity for you all, and I'll even give it to you just to kind of maybe even do on your own. But we're just going to review the various arguments that Niebuhr made. And then I'm going to leave an open-ended question and ask you to comment below on which of these arguments do you agree with most? Which do you agree with most? And hopefully, if you've been following us over these past few weeks, past few months, you'll be able to make an informed decision about which argument you subscribe to the most. So without further ado, let's review all of our wonderful, wonderful perspectives about who Jesus Christ is in culture, and then we'll engage with it a little bit more as we conclude. Here we are. So this first category is Christ against culture. Christ against culture. Our second category is Christ of culture. Our third category is Christ above culture. Our fourth category is Christ in culture and paradox. And then our final category is Christ the transformer of culture. So this is very helpful for us to see and understand, because what this does is this allows us to really kind of see on a blank canvas what Niebuhr's arguments were. And again, his aim is to answer what we call the enduring problem. The enduring problem: who is Jesus Christ in culture? And then ultimately, who are we supposed to be as Christians as a result of who Jesus is and was? So he asserts these 5 different arguments, attempting to come at it from multiple perspectives and share with us, give us kind of tools and resources to develop our own arguments for who we believe Jesus to be in culture. So just a little bit of recap, all right? Hopefully you guys are with me. Hopefully you have your notes, if those are something that you have taken over the past few weeks, over the past few months, and hopefully you can continue to follow along with us accordingly, all right? So Christ against culture is our first kind of tier, our first argument. And essentially what Niebuhr says is that Christ against culture is basically when culture and Christ are in opposition, right? They're in opposition. Christ is over here, culture is over here, and they do not intersect. The church is over here, society is over here, and they do not intersect. Christians are over here, non-Christians are over here, and they do not intersect. And I encourage you, if you want a more in-depth understanding of what that argument says, I want you to go back and watch our previous Bible study so you can get a better idea of the fullness of what H. Richard Niebuhr means, right? So Christ against culture. Then we have Christ of culture. And this argument asserts that Christ is a part of culture, right? Culture and Christ are intertwined. If you look here on our lovely, lovely graphic, you will see that the cross representing Christ and the world representing society are eclipsed, right? They are eclipsed like this. They just kind of flow right into one another. And essentially what Niebuhr tries to argue here is that they're a part of one another. Christ is of the culture. Christ is even arguably in culture. And Christ moves about the culture as Christ, but as a commoner with the people, with the community, with everybody, among society, in a way that allows Christ to be infused in the very society that his creation, ultimately humanity, but his Christians as well, live in, right? So we have Christ against culture. We have Christ of culture, and then we have Christ above culture. Christ above culture. Now, this argument differs slightly because what Niebuhr says here is that Christ interacts with culture, right? We see that here reflected in our graphic, right? Christ is here, culture is here, but Christ is ultimately above culture. At the end of the day, when all that is said and done, Christ is above culture. And so there's a level of limitation, right, of Christ's intersection and interaction with culture if Christ is above, right? They overlap. You see that here in the graphic. They overlap, but they're not fully intertwined with one another, which means that at the end of the day, when everything is said and done, Christ can be a part of the culture. But if the focus is not ultimately bringing it back to Christ, then that gets a little sticky for Niebuhr, right? That's another argument that he makes. So we have Christ against culture, opposition. We have Christ of culture, like incorporation, right? Then we have Christ above culture, which is like a slight separation, but it's still a little bit of integration. And then we have the final two, Christ and culture and paradox, and then Christ, the transformer of culture. So Christ and culture and paradox, as shown here on this graphic, is kind of like a seesaw. It's a teeter-totter. It's back and forth. One day, Christ and culture are here. The next day, they're here. And it's almost a constant fight and a battle and a tug and pull of who has the authority, who has the influence in this moment. Is it the society that influences how Christ shows up in the world, or is it Christ who influences how society is presented in the world, right? And so this paradox, this word paradox means to show opposition, but really to show kind of a teeter-totter. That's really the best way I can say it, a back and forth. It is constant tension between Christ and culture, and not in an opposing way like Christ against culture, but in a way that kind of goes with the wind, goes with maybe the fad, goes with what's hot, goes with what is of the interest of the people, goes with what is currently happening in society, right? So then that helps us arrive to Christ, the transformer of culture. So we have Christ against, Christ of, Christ above, Christ in culture and paradox, and then Christ, the transformer of culture. Now, this is the one that we talked about last week as we closed, where Christ is here to make culture new, to make culture better, to be an improvement. There's an infusing of Christ and culture that happens here, but ultimately Christ makes society and culture new and better. So you can slightly see here, and I'm going to enlarge this on the screen so that you can have a better view. If you see here in Christ, the transformer of culture, what you're able to see right in this area, and I hope that you all can see that, I am going to attempt to draw a circle around it. It should rather be right here, so that you can really kind of see what I'm talking about. If you look there it is, you see it. If you look there, you will see that this world, this earth, representing society and culture, has now become one with the cross, right? It's a little hard to tell because the transformer is kind of before this in the layers of the photo, but it's a cross shape with the earth inside of it, right? And so what we're doing here is depicting how Jesus Christ in this argument comes to be the transformer of culture. To transform means to make something new, to improve it, to make it better. It's a unity of sorts. This differs from Christ of culture because Christ of culture almost means that Jesus is a part of culture in such a way that Jesus does not have authority or dominion or influence over culture. He's just a part of it, kind of as a commoner. And so some people argue that that might be a little dangerous because not only does it humble Jesus in a way that I think is appropriate, but it may humble him too much in that it might put Jesus in a position to not have the influence that Jesus clearly came to provide to culture and society. But where some people argue that it differs for the transformer is Christ is a part of culture. Christ is a part of society. But Christ is a part of society, not in a way that's above it, right? Not in a way in paradox, not in a way that's against it or even of it, but in a way that transforms culture, right? And so Christ is a part of culture. Christ is infused in culture, but every situation that Christ is a part of is designed, and even just the result is to make it better because Christ is a part of it, right? Coming to transform and to make it new, right? So this is our recap. This is our recap of Christ and Culture, our book by H. Richard Niebuhr. And so our activity was going to be, I was going to read off a list of scenarios to you, and I was going to split you guys up in groups virtually. You guys are going to assign yourselves to groups, and you are going to take on the persona and the perspective of these people in this group. Somebody was going to be against culture. Someone's going to be of culture, above, in paradox, in transformer, right? And you're going to have to advocate for your perspective as if that's what you believed, even if you don't, right? And so I was going to read you a set of scenarios, and you were going to have to respond with the perspective that that person in that category would have. So I'll just give you a few of them so that you can go home and do them yourself. And you can do them by yourself to really enforce these concepts and hopefully put them in a modern context and understanding. So I'll just list them off and read them. And if you really want to do it, you can really write a response for each of the perspectives, because we don't have the availability to put you into teams, but you can write a response for each of the perspectives to these scenarios. So I'll give you an example. The scenario is a teenage girl who wants to do gospel rap. Then you would come and say what a person who is Christ against culture, an advocate for that perspective, would say. Christ of culture, Christ above, in paradox transformer. Let's just try one. So a teenage girl who wants to do gospel rap, maybe someone who is Christ against culture says, no, one, she's a girl, and so she should not be rapping at all. And two, if she was going to do anything gospel, it should be traditional gospel music, because rap is too close to like secular rap. And so there's a temptation for her to become of the world. We are not supposed to be in the world because Christ is here and we in culture is here. We are one with Christ. And so we're supposed to be set apart from the culture. And so if she goes into gospel rap, not only is it culturally offensive as a lady to do rap, but also it provides an opportunity for temptation for her to fall victim to the wiles of the world, because rap music is secular and it's influenced by the devil, and we should not mix gospel and rap, right? That will be a perspective of someone of Christ against culture, right? If someone who was Christ of culture was a part of this and they had a perspective, they would say, oh, a teenage girl who wants to do rap, that's so progressive. We love that. This is an opportunity for them to show Jesus Christ in a new way. And, maybe they can go on and win a Grammy as a result. They'll get to talk with the Migos, and they'll get to talk with 2 Chainz, and they'll get to talk with Nicki Minaj and Meg Thee Stallion. And you never know what could happen as a result of them being in the rap game, right? Maybe it's a little bit more like secularly influenced, but they think that it's cool. Somebody Christ above culture is like, they can do gospel rap as long as it always points back to Jesus Christ, right? Someone Christ in culture and paradox is like, well, I kind of see why it can be a temptation for like the secular world that can be very, not centered on Jesus Christ. But I see at the same time how this is an opportunity for Jesus Christ to reach people that otherwise wouldn't be reached because they may not come to church, right? That's Christ and culture and paradox. It's like going back and forth between the two. And then Christ the transformer of culture, that person might say, you know what? I think it's a great opportunity for Jesus to be influenced in the rap community, right? So you go into hip hop, you go into rap, and you bring Jesus into that space, and you might be able to transform and make the rap game better. You might be able to make the hip hop culture even better and less I don't know, objectifying of women, or less vulgar, or less violent, whatever it is. And you might be able to make that something that's better because Jesus is a part of it, right? Making it new. Right? That's just an example of what we were going to do tonight. And we will list the scenarios to be able to provide you an opportunity to really just flex these muscles of what you've learned and figure out how you can apply these perspectives, whether you agree with them or not, to the various scenarios that you will experience in your daily life as a Christian. All right. So I'm just going to read them off. We'll also make sure that they're in the comments as well. All right. So some other scenarios: a guy who thinks that you have to go to church to have a relationship with God. An old lady who thinks that Christian women should wear long skirts and shirts covering their wrists. A preacher who says that God can use anybody for God's good work. A coach that says that it's okay to come to church after the club on a Saturday night. A person who thinks that Jesus was too good to be with society. The millennial who is spiritual but not necessarily religious. The Gen Zer who is spiritual and not necessarily religious. The guy who feels like people won't come to Christ if Christ doesn't go to them, even in the streets outside of the church. So I want you to play with those scenarios and just kind of play with these perspectives that are, really now in our consciousness, in the way that we've learned them, and apply them to these scenarios to see how you can really kind of engage and interact this material in a way that helps you really kind of apply what it is that you've learned. The gist of all of this, and the reason why we really looked at this book and studied it, is it is so important for us to interrogate who Christ is in culture, because it in fact informs who we are to be in the culture, right? And so I don't want this to be something that just happened because, MJ needed some material for us, but I want us to really, really, really think about what it means for Christ to be a part of culture in whatever form, or away from culture in whatever form. And I want you to let me know what you think. I want you to comment at the bottom, comment below, and you let me know what you think about these perspectives. Which one do you subscribe to most? I think it's important to interrogate who Christ is in culture, because it helps us to better know him. It helps us to understand our role as Christians. It helps us to emulate Jesus. It helps us to express to people who Jesus really is. It helps us to live in the world as Christians and figure out how we're supposed to be in society, not just as an example, but as people who are living daily. It helps us to correct those incorrect iterations of these perspectives, and ultimately just gives us better footing to move about this world that we live in. All right. So I want you to go below and comment and let us know which perspective you subscribe to the most. And that closes out our Christ and Culture series. So proud of you guys for sticking with me through this. Grateful. Let's say a word of prayer. God, we thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this lesson in this series. God, I pray that we would apply these perspectives to our lives and really kind of interrogate the benefits and the dangers of subscribing to some of these perspectives. God, I pray that we would give you the charitable in the equitable perspective and image and model and perception that you deserve and that you showed to us in your word and continue to show to us each and every day. God bless now our time and the rest of our week, God, that we might be able to come back here on Sunday to hear from you. God, thank you for each and every person here. Meet them in their area of need. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, y'all have a good one. Bye.